Okie dokie. So here we go. Today, we're going to talk about the beginning of the Cold War. And the Cold War is a war of like ideas, and it's a war of feelings, and it's a war of words back and forth at each other. And it's not a hot war. Hot war is where people shoot at each other. It's more like a Facebook war where you're just yelling back and forth at each other instead of really talking to each other. And the Cold War takes place from the end of World War II, and it's going to last almost 50 years until the early part of 1990. And it's between the United States and the Soviet Union. Soviet Union is also the Russians, but technically Russians don't exist. And the two will never face each other on a battlefield, but they'll fight this war through other countries, through Korea and Vietnam, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Cuba. So that's where they'll fight the ideas. A couple of times we come really, really close to World War III, to a nuclear war, but obviously it never happens. So how did this happen? Well, here's how it happens. After World War II, this is what Europe looks like. Europe is completely destroyed. Europe has never really recovered from World War One, and now on top of that, they get World War Two. Right? Europe is just devastated from World War II. You can see the pictures; they're just devastated. Cities have been destroyed. Roads, factories, bridges, dams, all this infrastructure had been were in shambles. England is almost completely bankrupt from this. They have no money from fighting the war. They really had never recovered from World War One. France had had 4 years of German occupation, so they're very, very weak. Their government is very, very weak. They had had a number of big battles fought in the farmlands of France, so France is not doing well. Really, the only countries that come out of this still standing, that are still in pretty good shape, is the United States and the Soviet Union. Now, the Soviet Union, the Russians, remember from the Yalta conference, had gained all of this land in Eastern Europe that they had gone through chasing the Germans, and they were putting in communist governments that would be sympathetic to the Soviet Union. Okay? The United States, we had lost 416,000 men. Sounds like a lot, but in comparison to Russia, in comparison to the rest of Europe, really not a whole lot of people. We hadn't had any battles fought in the United States. We had Pearl Harbor, and that was about it. So our farmland and our factories, our infrastructure is still intact. Okay? And coming out of World War II, the United States has the most dominant, strongest, largest economy in the world. It's not even close coming out of World War II, right? So the United States is this dominant economic, military, political superpower, the likes of which the world had never seen before. And our only rival to our military presence, maybe our political presence, is the Soviet Union. All right, so the first real shot in the Civil War takes place in February of 1946, right after the end of World War II. And it comes from the Soviet Union. This guy, Joseph Stalin, who's the dictator of the Soviet Union. So Joseph Stalin has given a speech in the Duma, which is like the Russian Congress. And he makes this statement that capitalism, the type of economy that the United States is, and communism cannot live together. Okay. Now, capitalism is an economic system that's based on people doing things to make money, and they make money if they're making things or doing things that people want. Okay, the free market. The market determines what people want, how much they want, and so on. So people will make that stuff, and they'll do it not because it's necessarily what people want. They do it because there's a profit for them. Communism believes that everybody should just do things because it's for the benefit of everyone, and that nobody should own private property because private property doesn't benefit anybody but rich people. And so communism and capitalism can't live together. Okay? Now Stalin says all of these wars that we've gone through has been caused by capitalism. And he says that capitalism always needs new resources to feed its economy. Its economy is all about making stuff. And in order to make stuff, it needs resources. It needs oil. It needs wood. It needs water. It needs whatever. And so capitalism is always expanding, looking to get these resources so its economy can continue to go. And then because of this, capitalism invades countries and takes over countries to get access to their resources. So all these wars are caused by communism or capitalism, according to Stalin. And Stalin says eventually the United States and the Soviet Union are going to run into each other. He says the Soviet Union's not expanding because we don't need all these resources. That's not the way our economy works. But eventually, capitalism is going to try to take over territory that's owned by the communists, and that's going to lead to a war. And so that's what Stalin says. Wars are caused by capitalism. Capitalism is bad, and capitalism is going to create a war because it's eventually going to run into a communist country. Huh. So then, in response to that, we get Winston Churchill, the former Prime Minister of England during World War II. He's no longer the Prime Minister of England, but he's still a very popular figure, especially in the United States, because of his role during World War II. So Winston Churchill is at this tiny college in Missouri called Fulton College. And Churchill, in March of 1946, gives a speech that he's going to respond to what Stalin said about capitalism causing wars. And Churchill is basically going to say, oh, nay, nay, I think not. Churchill says that the Soviet Union has dropped, and this is the term he uses, an iron curtain across Europe. Okay, that they're expanding communist influence, and there's this iron curtain, and you can see on the map here, right? All of this over here is all communist. This is all taken over by the Soviet Union following World War II. So this is the Iron Curtain. It's a division between capitalism and communism. It's division between dictatorship and freedom. Okay? And Churchill says that only England and the United States can save the world from the communists constantly expanding. So when you think of the Iron Curtain, I mean, what do you think of? You think of like cold and foreboding and gray and hard and, just not a very warm thing. So according to Churchill, right, here's the Iron Curtain. Over here is doom and death and darkness. No, like Darth Vader. And over here is sunshine and light and happiness, right? This is bad and this is good. And this is the dividing line. The Iron Curtain is a dividing line of that. Now, today, in your guys' world, the Iron Curtain doesn't mean a lot. But when I was growing up, I mean, everybody knew where the Iron Curtain was. It was a definite division in the world where the Iron Curtain was. So according to Churchill, the communists are always looking to push this curtain further and further out, this Iron Curtain. And only the United States and England can stop the communists from doing this. Huh. And then we get a really, really, really important document that comes out. It's called the Kennan Telegram. George Kennan was an American diplomat who had been in Moscow for, I think, 25, 30 years. And he was an expert in communism, but especially Soviet communism. So he's an American diplomat working over in Moscow. And in 1946, George Kennan sends a telegram to President Truman. And in the telegram, he explains to Truman, this is how the Soviet Union works. This is what the Soviet Union wants, and this is how the United States needs to deal with the Soviet Union. Okay, so this is the Kennan telegram, really, really important in setting up the Cold War here. George Kennan says that the Soviet Union is always looking to expand, and it's always looking to spread communism. And he says, look, the communist revolution takes place in Russia in 1917, right? Communists take over Russia. And pretty soon, they push out of Russia and they take over all of these smaller states, Latvia and Lithuania and Ukraine and Georgia and so on, and they expand out and they take over all these smaller states around the Soviet Union, all these smaller countries around Russia, and they combine them all into one gigantic country called the Soviet Union. And then during World War II, they expand even further outside of the Soviet Union into Eastern Europe. And now they put in communism in Poland and in Czechoslovakia and in Hungary and all these other places around Eastern Europe. And he said that's what they do. And they're not going to stop with Eastern Europe. He said what they do is that the Soviet Union, communism will take over a country. And then they push and they poke and they prod all of the neighboring countries, and they find the weakest country with the weakest government or the weakest economy or the weakest military, and they'll push into that country and take it over. And then they push and they poke and they prod all the neighboring countries of that country, finding the weakest one, and they go in to that country and take it over. And they just keep repeating this process, and that's how communism expands, according to George Kennan. Okay? This is known as the domino theory. Really, really, really important term that you got to know. The domino theory. The belief that if one country becomes communist, then over a period of time, it's just a matter of time that the other countries will fall to communism as well. Like lining up dominoes. You knock one down, all of them eventually fall down. This is known as a domino theory. Once a country becomes communist, then eventually all of the surrounding countries will become communist. Really important that you know that term and you understand it. So Kennan says, look, this is how the Soviet Union works. And one thing that they don't listen to, one thing that they don't understand, one thing that they don't respond to is negotiation. You can talk all you want, and it goes in one ear and out the other. Negotiations, diplomacy means nothing to the Soviet Union. Soviet Union, George Kennan says, understands one thing and one thing only, and that's force. You punch them in the nose and you got their attention. They understand strength. They understand force. So George Kennan tells Truman, wherever communists are, if we want to stop it from expanding, we've got to put troops wherever the communists are. If the communists are over here, we've got to have troops here. If they're there, we're here. We've got to put troops, American army, soldiers, wherever communism is, to stop it. And that's what they understand. Really important that you understand this. This is really going to play into how the United States addresses the Cold War for the next 50 years. The Kennan Telegram really helped shape American Cold War policy. All right, so here's how it would work. If the communists are here in East Germany, we got to get American troops in West Germany. If communists are in Czechoslovakia, we got to be in Austria. If the communists are in the Soviet Union, we got to be in Finland, right? Wherever they are, we got to be across from them. If they're in Albania, we got to be in Greece. That's how this works. So coming out of this is the Truman Doctrine. You have got to know the Truman Doctrine. If you don't understand this, if you don't get this, the next semester really will not make any sense. You will be completely lost. You got to understand this. So all of this is going on. We've got Stalin saying capitalism causes wars. We've got Winston Churchill talking about the Iron Curtain and communism is a threat to the world. And then we've got George Kennan saying you've got to stop them. You've got to keep them from expanding because this is what they do. And the domino theory. While all this is going on, communists throughout Western Europe, the Communist Party throughout Western Europe is becoming more and more powerful, and they're getting more and more people elected into different parliaments around Western Europe. Turkey and Greece are like right there at the edge. They're going to fall to communism. Okay. These countries, now you got to remember, these countries are really, really poor. Things are going really, really bad. And when you're really desperate, you don't have any money, you don't have any jobs, you don't have any food, you don't have any way to rebuild yourself. When you're that desperate, you're just looking for somebody to come in and promise to make things better. And that's exactly what the communists are doing. They're saying, look, if you become communist, we're going to give you jobs, we're going to give you food, we're going to give you housing, we're going to fix all of these problems. You just got to be a communist. And so radical ideas that normally you wouldn't be attracted to now sound really attractive when you're really, really desperate. And that's what's happening in Turkey and that's what's happening in Greece. Both are about to become communist because of the damage that has happened to them during World War I and World War II. On top of that, Italy and France don't seem that far behind. It's just a very short period of time that the Communist Party will become the largest dominant party in both the Italian and French parliament. And then France and Italy are communist. Hokey smoky, right? So it looks like this domino theory, right? It's moving out of Eastern Europe and it's go to Turkey. Right next to Turkey is Greece. Right next to Greece is Italy, and right next to Italy is France. The domino theory, boom, 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 boom. So, fearing that communism is going to continue to spread, and with the Truman speech in his mind, that we've got to stop the spread of communism. They're looking to push the Iron Curtain further out, and the Kennan telegram talking about the domino theory and talking about how we respond to communism. Truman comes up with a policy that he believes is going to stop the spread of communism, called the Truman Doctrine. Okay, this will become the basis of virtually all American foreign and domestic policies for the next 50 years. Everything that happens in the United States, I mean everything that happens in the United States. Did I say everything? I think I said everything that happens in the United States is all about the Cold War. And the Truman Doctrine is a huge driving factor in this. Okay? I truly mean everything. The growth of the American economy in the 1950s, civil rights movement, um, rock and roll, Vietnam, the water, the Nixon, some of the Nixon scandals and the Reagan Revolution, and all of this is all about the Cold War. And the Cold War, the American response to the Cold War, is all about the Truman Doctrine. This drives everything for the next 50 years. Okay, you got to know this. This is important. You've got to know this. This is important. Truman Doctrine. Oh, guess what you need to know? You need to know the Truman Doctrine. Oh, is the Truman Doctrine important? The Truman Doctrine is really important for what we're about to do for this semester. You got to know it. So, here we go. Let's talk about the Truman Doctrine. So, it's really divided up into two different parts. There's two different parts to the Truman Doctrine. The first part is economic. Okay, here's what the economic part of the Truman Doctrine is. We're going to bring in something that's called the Marshall Plan, and it's a plan that was devised by Truman's Secretary of State, George Marshall, who was a general during World War II. And he asked George Marshall, come up with a plan to help out Western European countries that are just devastated out of this. So George Marshall comes up with this thing called the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan is basically just give the European countries money to rebuild. Just give them money. The United States should just give them money and tell them, you can do with this whatever you think you need to do. Whatever you think you need to spend this on. You need to spend it on roads, spend it on roads. You want to spend it on factories, spend it on factories. You want to spend it on rebuilding your cities, do that. The money is free. You don't need it to pay it back. Just take the money. You don't need to pay it back. It's offered to every European country. Even Poland, even Czechoslovakia, even the Soviet Union is offered this pile of money. Okay. Now, the Soviet Union tells Eastern Bloc countries, these are all the countries that are communist, Soviet Union tells them, you're not taking the American money. You will not take the American money. So, they don't. which Western Europe is really happy about because it leaves more money for them. Okay? And this comes with no strings attached. You don't need to pay it back. We're not going to tell you how to spend it. So there's no strings attached to the economic part of this plan. Kind of. Yeah, kind of, maybe, a little. Yeah. So there you can see a map of who gets the most money, right? A lot of money. Most of the money goes to England and then France. Little bit of money goes to Portugal. A good amount of money goes to Italy and West Germany, right? So you can see what countries got the most money. And this is where the money from the Marshall Plan went. And again, no strings attached. Kind of. Then we get the second part of the Truman Doctrine, the military part. So here's what happens. The United States goes over and, they're looking at these countries and say, wow, you're doing really great things with all this money we gave you. Look, you've rebuilt your cities and you're rebuilding some roads here. And gosh, your farmland is looking like it could start growing stuff again. You're doing great stuff here. And these countries go, yeah, we really appreciate it. And we're so glad the United States gave us this money. We could have never done this on our own. We're so appreciative of the United States. The United States, oh, please don't mention it. It's okay. That's so nice. And then the United States goes, over those hills there, the communists are there, right? I mean, that's a communist nation right over there. And they go, oh, I know, I'm well aware of that. The United States goes, but I mean, if the communists, the Soviet Union and the communists showed up here and tried to take you over, of course you'd be able to defend yourself and, drive them out because, I mean, they might want to come here and get some of this, your new factories and stuff you've built. Of course you can defend yourself. And these countries go, no, we really can't. I mean, we really don't. We were devastated in World War II. We really don't have a way to defend ourselves if the communists show up. And the United States goes, oh, man, that's terrible. Gosh, if only there was some way we could help you out. Gosh, I mean, I don't want all your hard work to go to waste here. Gosh, hey, bing, I got an idea. What if we brought some army guys in here? What if we brought the military in here and we just stationed them here in your country to protect you from those communists? And these countries go, you would do that for us? Of course we would. We're buddies. We're pals. All you got to do is just say yes. Bring your troops in, right? I mean, if you don't invite us in, and we show up, that's an invasion. But if you invite us in and give us land to build bases for your protection from the communists, from them expanding, that's a whole different thing. So the United States offers to protect these countries that participated in the Marshall Plan from communists showing up. Okay, countries agree and they give some land to the United States. That's fine, right? We can't just show up with military troops and say, "Oh, we're going to protect you." That's an invasion. But these people have invited us in, okay? And so the United States begins to station troops all over Europe to stop the spread of communism. Okay, this is known as containment, right? We're containing communism. We're stopping it wherever it is. It's fine. We're just not going to let it grow. That's a really important term for you to know. Containment. We're containing the spread of communism. And this is why, still today, there are more troops stationed throughout the world than there are stationed in the United States. Okay? We're really the only country that does this. Do you know of any big military bases from England in the United States? No, of course you don't, because there are none. But the United States has military bases, and we have soldiers all throughout the world. And it's all remnants of the Cold War, where the original intent was to stop the spread of communism, right? To contain it and make sure it doesn't show up in France, or it doesn't show up in Italy, or it doesn't show up in England, or it doesn't show up in West Germany, or it doesn't show up in South Korea. That's why the troops are still there today. It's a remnant of this Cold War policy of containing communism. Now, obviously, communism really is not a threat today. So now it's about terrorism, stopping the spread of terrorism, containing terrorism, and making sure it doesn't come to the United States. This is still around today. Containment is a really, really important term. Okay? So we give them money, the Marshall Plan. We gave Western Europe money to rebuild their economies. And then to make sure that their efforts are not taken away from them by the communists, we stationed troops there. It's the Truman Doctrine. It's all about containment, stopping the spread of communism. Super important that you know that. All right, so what are the effects of the Truman Doctrine? Well, it's pretty good. $13 billion total is spent in Europe, okay, in part of the Marshall Plan. $13 billion are just given to Western Europe to rebuild their economy however they wish, okay? Turkey and Greece never become communist. France and Italy obviously never become communist. Countries that participated in the Marshall Plan between 1948 and 1952, they saw their economies increase in that 4-year period by 200%. Woof! I mean, that's a tremendous economic turnaround. And no more countries are in Europe are taken over by the Soviet Union. This stops the spread of communism in Europe dead in its tracks. So now the Soviet Union and the communists begin to take their act elsewhere in the world, and they begin to focus in other places around the world, Asia, Africa. And that's where we're headed to next. All right, you guys. Make sure you take these notes, make sure you turn them in, and we will talk to you next time. Don't forget about the Truman Doctrine. Super duper important. All right. Take care, guys.